this rusted metal can, but the bottom here shows. It's really nice to see how the concrete will grab onto this stuff.
Yeah.
Where the top surface is really flat and smooth and presentable, the bottom has like the anchors for the concrete to hold.
Okay.
So I would look for stuff like that. And then when I'm designing on the concrete, you have to design as the concrete's like setting. So you have to be quick about what side's gonna face up. I usually like to start
I don't know, man. I
at
know
the
what
end
this is.
sometimes.
I read books backwards too. I walk backwards sometimes. They even come with backwards, man. So let's go backwards.
Let's do it.
So today we're joined by Eric Vasquez. Is it Vasquez or Vasquez?
I say Vasquez.
Vasquez?
Vasquez is, I think, the more traditional way, but we don't have to do all that.
So we're joined by Eric Vasquez today.
Thanks for having me.
Here at Young Future Gallery. He is showing currently his show Layers on Layers on view till July 6th.
Yeah. A lot of layers.
It's a lot of layers.
Yeah. It's like peeling an onion.
Peeling an onion.
Makes you want to cry.
How did you get your start? And what kind of work have you been drawn to?
I think the first kind of art that I did was photography. I was in like middle schools when the digital camera started coming out, and I started doing a lot of like self-portrait stuff. You know, I've got weird self-portraits of me like posing with myself, you know, putting on a tripod. And that's when I first started seeing like, I think my expression come out, because, you know, I wasn't really painting that much when I was younger. So I got really into digital photography in like high school and community college, and that's when I got into the graphic stuff. But I like to dabble with like painting and drawing, but I use a lot of tools also. Right now in my studio I'm doing a lot of like construction type of work, like building furniture, just for fun, just to experiment with tools.
You have a lot of experience in construction?
Not a lot of professional experience, but my childhood revolves around using tools, fixing cars with my dad, pouring the concrete, setting posts in the ground, you know, rebuilding like a fence.
Okay, so this would be the first time you worked with concrete?
No, this is me revisiting my childhood in some way.
Okay.
And using a material that I've never worked with before, but also a very familiar material that we walk on and we see an abundance of in the urban environment.
So you didn't work with it in terms of your art, but you were working on it. What you were working with concrete, like as just like when you were little, helping your dad.
Yeah, as more of a construction kind of material. And it was more up until a couple years ago I started seeing me tie in the rusted metal and found object collage into that material. So it was more like the binder, the thing that held everything together, that solidified all the work.
Was that your first choice, or did you think of other materials as binder?
Originally I've thought of concrete. And then as I was working with it, I was experimenting with 3 different types of material. Did like plaster, heavier concrete, stronger, high strength concrete, and a lot of these was giving me different textures and different viscosity. So I was playing with what I liked, what I didn't like, and part of those things were mixing also in this show. So it was kind of experimental in that way.
One more thing. Do you think that having this studio allows you to experiment with this process, and that if you did not have this studio, your studio, that it would be harder for you to kind of be more experimental and use different materials?
Yeah, for sure, because I would be working at my house, you know, in my room. I don't have a lot of space there to use tools, so definitely having a community space that is outdoors or you know, warehouse setting allows me to play with other materials. So they have like a wood shop and a metal shop there, which allows me to cut metal and be loud and not worry about catching fires, you know. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this work without an art studio. I'd have to be outdoors and source a work studio outside of my place and bring the studio with me, which isn't that easy to do.
So when you were collecting the objects, did you already had it in your mind that you're gonna put them in concrete, or was it like you were just collecting them to do something with because you said like you had some rusty stuff and other pieces before.
So I had ideas of collaging metal on top of metal and assembling them to plywood, kind of like the first generation, more like the physical collage pieces. The concrete was like another level of that, but originally it was going to be just assemblage on top of wood and hardware.
Okay.
Then the concrete came a while back, and I felt like that tied into this collage work because it allowed me to embed stuff in it.
Yeah.
Where do you see this work you've been doing going or expanding to?
So the work that I saw coming from this would be a lot larger in size. I originally wanted to take up like a full wall, just one piece, and that's what I'm going towards, is creating my mold, maybe with like fabricating a different shape of mold versus like a rectangular piece or a square piece, and larger in size, and mixing more of technology in the future. So potentially having lights or sounds, right, or functional aspects to the pieces where you can interact and open up certain areas. Maybe discover something for yourself if you're curious. So giving that option would be really fun.
Not like that. Some interactive stuff sounds fun. Do you like to keep it seems fun to you, but do you want it to be more? I don't know, you were saying earlier you like it to look more professional, but
I don't know if I want it to look more professional. I think the setting is professional because these pieces are overlooked a lot of the times.
okay.
Being they're very rough, very industrial pieces, you don't normally see them like in a coffee shop. But I think also these are small enough for them to go in a house somewhere, on someone's wall. But they're kind of fragile in a way.
Yeah, I find a lot of times smaller pieces, people are more open to given the space it takes up. So yeah, if you were to go big, it'd be great to see. I'm curious how it look on somebody's wall.
Yeah, and that's probably more like a permanent space if it's a big piece. Stuff like that you don't really move too often. So maybe that's more of a commission-based.
Commercial work, lobbies.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like the color changing like as the concrete ages?
Yeah. Some of these are a lot lighter than they were when I first brought them in. I don't mind them. I think the even the metal will rust a little bit more as the time goes on. So that's part of the pieces. Which I'm curious on leaving some of these outside for a little while and seeing what happens to them. Maybe they start collecting moss because of the weathering. I would like little spiders to create webs on some of these pieces. That's kind of something that I want to see is how the environment will affect these pieces, with age and time.
Yeah, since this stuff is all found, it's discarded, you want that abandoned urban decay look.
These kind of got cleaned up when I was working on them because I had to sand them off a little bit. Obviously, I resurfaced them off the ground and used a brush to clean off the dust that they had. And then once the concrete went on top, I went back over with a brush and cleaned them off some more. So I want to see the dirt come back onto some of these. in a nice, in a natural way though.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it kind of being displayed as like a exterior, like maybe like in a garden setting instead? Like
I would be open to that. Yeah, I don't necessarily want them to be on the ground. If they're still on the wall facing me, that's really cool. I love them how they look on a white wall, on a white surface. But yeah, maybe having, I want to install these in an urban landscape somewhere permanently and seeing what that does to people as they experience it. Like taking it to a spot, mounting it to like a building, maybe like smaller pieces.
I guess that opens up public art, like putting it, like working with the city, putting it in a park, or maybe even working with developers, putting it like in front of their apartment buildings or something.
Could be. I can see that being part of like architecture.
Yeah.
Like the facade texture.
Yeah.
Yeah, little pieces. Maybe there's opportunity for that. That's more commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool though. I like the idea.
You're drawing the architecture?
I am drawing architecture. I think as the city's changing, we're always like keeping an eye on buildings that are looking pretty deteriorated. A lot of signage, old signage that we want to preserve or keep. They have a lot of history to them.
A lot of the stuff you found off the train tracks, is that the only spot you explore or stumble upon rusty boat?
Yeah, I find a lot of signage and fencing around abandoned buildings, abandoned warehouses, places that are no longer in use. These things are falling off their property. A lot of times friends will give me stuff too that they're finding, so they'll pass that down to me because they have no use for it. But yeah, I think a couple friends dropped off some rusted metal cans to me, the studio.
What about influences outside of art? That like, is there something that's not artistic that kind of makes its way into like your art practice, or just ideas that come in that don't come from like looking at other painting or drawing or anything else?
Something that came to mind right now was the skill that investigators have. People who look for something, people who search, and that's part of something that I utilize in my work, or on a daily basis walking around the street. My eyes catch up details that a lot of people don't catch. My eyes want to zoom into a certain detail of the environment or a person, just to look at the texture of something. So not really an art related thing, but how people see. I want people to stand in front of my piece longer and really zoom into it. A lot of the murals that I paint have little details that I think require someone to spend more time in front of, and really see investigate how that got there. Investigate where all these, where the eye goes. That's why a lot of these pieces are kind of busy. But as I worked through the show, I felt like I needed to put less in there so that it allowed create more brainstorming to happen as people saw it. So more of a memory. It pulls out a memory of some kind. Whereas the overwhelm of texture kind of stops that from happening.
So you say you're inspired by the people, just the everyday settings.
I think the curiosity.
So curiosity.
Yeah, people curiosity.
So yes. I guess that would be what I was trying to think of. You're talking about people staring and trying to pick things apart, or trying to find different things that really catch your eye. And you said zoom in. So curiosity.
I think the curiosity of, it's like turning over a rock, right? Sometimes that has the whole theme for the show. you know, should I open that door or not?
Mhm.
Right, seeing if something is going to happen if you make a move. And that's kind of what we do when we investigate certain spots or areas. We take a chance and see what's behind that door or that corner. You know, and that's kind of what this work's inspired by.
With all your urban exploring, have you ever got to, I don't know, trouble or come across something in a building that you were rummaging about?
Nothing has been bad in that way. I've gotten away with being in areas I shouldn't have been in the first place, but I think it has a lot with how you carry yourself, how you communicate with people. You know, you can steer the conversation away from punishment all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's more just I'm just a curious person here by accident, you know.
Yeah, demeanor and approach go a long way in those situations.
I think it has a lot about intent, what your intention is, you know, there. Are you trying to hurt something, or are you more of, you know, I come in peace?
Totally. So what's like the biggest piece you've dragged out of one of these places?
That piece that on the wall there, that diamond pattern fence, was a lot larger than how it was now. That piece I've incorporated into other pieces. You know,
Okay.
you kind of see that around the work. Some of these other pieces, like the sign here, this is also kind of around the show. So a lot of the language in one of these pieces are mixed into the show, which feels into like the cohesion.
Do you alter your found objects a lot for the pieces, or for like you said, you wanted these to tie in more? Is that the only reason you?
I don't alter like the spray cans, but a lot of the like the metal. If I need to trim it down, I can cut stuff or put holes through it if I need to fasten it to or anchor it to the concrete. But I don't like to mess with the overall look of it. I change the shape if I need to. You know, like as far as cropping it.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you have a tetanus shot?
I don't. No, I don't
Oh,
wear
no.
gloves. I don't wear gloves either. Yeah.
Have you ever cut yourself?
Never. You know, I was actually surprised. I got to the end.
Knock on wood then.
I got to the end of the show, and I just, you know, it's always coming to my mind, especially when I'm cutting the metal. You have to like sand it down, and I'm always aware, just like, oh yeah, remember to not cut yourself. So that's always like in the back of my mind. It's like,
That's pretty impressive
yeah.
that you've never cut yourself.
Well, yeah.
Shit.
Just play safe.
Yeah.
Safe and smart. Usually you should be good. Yeah, I tend to get burrs and splinters constantly playing with stuff.
No accidents yet, though.
That's good. 0 accidents in the workplace.
What draws you to like the rust objects? Why these materials specifically? I mean, just like parts of fence, wood, most like a lot of metal and concrete.
A lot of the appeal has to be the age and the transformation of a material, whereas this material has a history, has a story. It was used by somebody some time. You know how it got there, and it's more of just like the skeleton of what it was. A lot of these are cracked, or you know, the marble is showing from these pieces, so it's more like the carcass of what it was used for. So now it's like a repurpose of something that was decaying, has beauty.
So you said the appeal to these materials is the age, the time, the story it could tell if it could talk. But you were also saying earlier that it also brought you back to your childhood, playing with tools or working with tools. Is this work here tied to reminiscent of, childhood adventures?
It's these bring memories of actually like the child and the adult that's at play, right? You never lose how to play. I feel like as an adult you need to tap into that. As an artist, you tap into experimenting and being playful and expressive, and that I think this kind of ties into that. But the fencing is more of a boundary that I was trying to push as in my young adult years. Boundaries from society, from parents, telling you not to go to these certain places. I feel like that chain link fence concept represents that, and the cutting of that is my adulthood kind of breaching those barriers, those boundaries, and finding the beauty in those places, in those environments. I guess it's a constant reminder of pushing limits, right? Pushing boundaries, opening doors.
Exploring an unknown. To go back to like the materials earlier, when somebody came in and said that especially those ones behind you, the cans and the concrete, makes him think of the fossil, like the fish fossil that like that picture. And there's something about like an impression left behind by something that's not here anymore, or like in the past, right? And then you get to kind of witness it or learn it, but it's already taken a different form.
Yeah, interesting. We've lost a lot of great art in the Bay Area, and people think about what that represents. That's another concept around the show. The found object stuff, the stories that these objects told a while back, and once we find them, we interpret them differently. Some of us gravitate towards the spray can, some people don't.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. If they're not part of that, or if that's not part of their everyday or their culture, or they think of something else to kind of,
The connotation of those pieces.
Yeah.
Spray can is thought of like a negative thing, by a lot of people who aren't artists necessarily. Like the rattle can, that sound it triggers people in a lot of different ways.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see that, but
Oh yeah.
I'm a fan of the Rust-Oleum, the rusty can.
Stops rust,
It does. Fish oils. For me, I like it because it's, speaking of graffiti, I see that, and to me it's like a graffiti, like archaeology. Like, which graffiti artist / writer, tagger, what may have you, use that, what they did with it, how they express themselves. I like those pieces a lot. Those ones actually speak to me, so I really appreciate them.
I had a feeling you would. Yeah, I had a feeling that a lot of people in that community would gravitate to this stuff.
What's the process like? Does it change throughout doing the pieces, or like for each piece, like is it like, do you have like a kind of like a set, kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of thing, or like how does it get from just being these pieces and these materials put together to here?
So each size, each shape had a different mold. so I was working with a boundary that these pieces had to fit in. And a lot of the time I was thinking about composition, so I was prioritizing composition.
The graphic designer in you.
Yeah, the layout, the margins. So I was kind of composing them in the box before I poured the concrete. And it was hard to see because the box was brown and the concrete was going to be gray. So I was having trouble seeing what the rust and the gray would look like. So I had to use my imagination. It wasn't working that well sometimes. But I had a lot of trust. I was like, I trust this is going to work out. So I was playing a lot with that compositional stuff. And it's like, kind of like printmaking. There was a little bit of the unknown mixed with that, and you have to kind of just play with it and see what happens. So you get a lot of happy accidents with the work that I do, or my process. So a lot of them, the molds were teaching me about the next piece that came after that. So a lot of the hanging hardware was one of the first things that I was envisioning and completely changed as I was making the pieces. So the hanging hardware was the most important thing, which I thought about at the beginning, was how's the end piece gonna look? You know, there's a few of these that I didn't think about the hanging hardware, and I had to figure it out after that, which is stressful, right? But the more that I did, the more pieces that I finished. Like the last piece was the most successful piece. Because I've developed all those skills and all those lessons.
Yeah, I appreciate a good misstep. That's the best way to learn from me. I noticed only one of these is actually framed. Is that a later piece? That
was an early piece.
That's an earlier piece.
Yeah, that was actually one of the first ones.
Okay.
The frame was more of like the mold. And then I realized that the frame added structure, added more of a gallery look to these pieces, and I thought I'd keep it because I was gonna build frames for a lot of these, and I was gonna actually eventually started working with a wood mold versus a cardboard mold, and then I would unscrew the wood pieces, and then it came nice and clean. But the one that I found, it was a found frame, so it wasn't something that I made.
Nice.
So it came like that, and then it matched the size of the other pieces, so it worked out that way.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, it's a good piece.
Yeah, it was meant to be. Yeah, I try to do like texture of nails and screws and hardware and nuts, but I put them in a bag so that I could remove them and get the impression of. But I realized there wasn't enough pressure to get that amount of detail.
Really?
So that was my first, and I almost didn't include that in the show. But then I saw that it felt good with the pattern on the wall. And then that rusted metal fence was like perfect element to overlap. It just tied into the rest of the work. So.
And it's good placing right there at the edge where the wall changes.
It worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I like the pillow texture, and also one of your other pieces, the corners, because you said you used cardboard. Those corners, I thought pillow corners too.
I lined the cardboard with plastic so that I could reuse the cardboard mold over and over again, and the plastic was giving these like wrinkled effects on the edges, which it ended up being like a nice aspect to a lot of the pieces.
Yeah, and building and construction, it's crazy because they use gasoline or diesel on their wood forms, so then it doesn't stick to the concrete.
Oh, really?
It doesn't stick to it.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Oh, I read also what is it, canola oil or some kind of oil or something.
Yeah, oils, sort of like gasoline, diesel.
Gasoline's scary.
Well, it's like usually what I've seen, they usually use like old stuff. Like it's been sitting, it looks gross. It's in a can and gunky.
Yeah.
But it works. Their forms pop right off. So, and usually, if they vibrate them, usually it's pretty smooth too.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't have all that wood texture.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do. exploring in some tunnels, you could see like the
wood.
the plywood pattern
Yeah.
on the walls, and they would trip me up. So I'm like, is this
Yeah.
the wall?
Mm-hmm.
And just it's skimmed with concrete?
Yeah.
No, it's the impression of the
Yeah.
wood that formed it. So how do you feel about the rotisserie chicken?
I'm a fan.
I thought so.
Yeah, it makes things so much easier.
Chicken salad.
Chicken salad, chicken tacos, chicken enchiladas. Yeah.
So the chicken lasts more than just the first eating. You put it in your refrigerator.
Oh, yeah.
Use it later.
Do you reheat it in the microwave?
I shred it and put it in a container.
Good job.
And then
Because if you reheat that
Yeah.
carcass, the bones always smell so bad. I'm like, I need this. Earlier you're saying you teach. Does teaching relate to your work in any way?
Teaching creates the stress that allows artists to come out and express. I feel like teaching takes time away from doing art. I feel like teaching is like your main job, and your art is like your second or third job. So I needed to take a nap in between going to the studio because I was overwhelmed. You need to decompress from a work day. So there needs to be a lot of structure and compartmentalized life to allow for the art making.
It's like such a shift in your train of thought, the way you speak about things, right? And then when you start to do more experimental stuff with your work, it's because teaching is such a like fundamental thing. Like you're always talking about basics, and then when you're doing your work, which is experimental, it's like blowing all that stuff out, right? So it's kind of like two different mindsets.
Yeah, a lot of the teaching is talking, explaining what you're doing, whereas when you're making, you're not explaining it to anybody. So it's the opposite.
Does it help with the artist statement?
The teaching?
Yeah.
I haven't experienced that yet, but I feel like I can see how it does help out a lot. Yeah, the artist statements are challenging for me. It takes me a while.
I understand.
Me too, especially if your work is in layers. I feel like it's so hard to like put it in like to encapsulate it into like just a paragraph or like a couple paragraphs,
Oh, yeah.
right? Yeah.
It's a whole book, right? And you had to shorten it into a paragraph, which is the hardest part. Yeah.
And some of it is just like more abstract, where you're just like, well, I just felt like putting it here. It felt right.
How do you explain intuition?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you explain like what just feels right?
Do you feel like you're able to teach a little bit of that process?
Yeah, I mean, I can teach about digging into the self. Teaching really is just talking about it, asking questions. That's the teacher right there, is a question. And then you're the student, and you got to figure out what is the reason why I'm doing these things.
What are the classes? What classes do you do?
I
one
teach
of
art,
those.
mainly intro to art, intro to visual painting. So there's elementary, middle school level, and the high school is more of like a painting therapy. So I ask them questions like, why do they do that? Why do you like this?
Is there some mixed media involved, or mostly two-dimensional?
Mostly two-dimensional. The high school, they're alternative ed high school, so they're the kids that are suspended or expelled. They're there for fighting, or they have already like a criminal record. So my principal doesn't want us to bring anything sharp into the classroom. They can hurt themselves. So a lot of it is just the paintbrush on canvas, the safest, most practical way.
You were saying your art is like it could be your second or third job. Do you look at your creations as a job, or do you have fun with it? Because when I look at my art as a job, I can't really do it.
Yeah. The difference between painting a mural and doing this work for me is the freedom to make whatever I want. No one told me to make these pieces. I'm not here to please anybody with my work. It's more of pleasing the self and overcoming a challenge and overcoming a problem, solving an issue. You know, and that's what this work is for me. Is solving the question is how is this all going to look and hang, and how are the pieces going to be embedded into the work. So, not really a job. I think doing as an artist for myself, my route is more of growth. How is the artist in me going to grow as I get older? But the teaching helps me kind of maintain my livelihood, my lifestyle. I feel like that's what teaching does. You know, I feel like a lot of artists have to be teachers in some way to maintain the lifestyle of an artist.
Yeah, especially here in California, Bay Area, right? You need to have something stable, like something consistent with a paycheck.
Something that you care about too. I feel like it's hard. I've had a lot of trouble working jobs that I wasn't passionate about.
That's true.
And so working with kids or working with people has been very fulfilling.
Yeah, with that.
So still
With
figuring
that,
out.
like without, if you weren't doing art or teaching art, or if you weren't creating, what would you pursue?
I'm still figuring that out. You know, if I could get paid to travel, then that'd be the thing. But what I've learned that has been most fulfilling for me is working with people, having conversations around mental health, having conversations about lifestyle and what's good and what's bad. You know.
Yeah, you're saying this work is about, for you, you're talking about, you know, growing and evolving, but I think as humans, we should concentrate on that anywhere. I mean, especially, you're talking about art therapy and helping out, I guess, mentally. I mean, that's what most of my art does for me. It's very therapeutic, and it's like it can be like a meditation sometimes.
Yeah. I think helping people discover that has been, I think what the teaching aspect has done for me. I've helped a lot of people discover a new outlet for them. You know, as young people, it's super important. How does my work fit into No Future?
Well, you're talking about how, that's interesting, because what you just told me right now a little bit how it can tie into, you're talking about evolving and, you know, pushing art to others, keeping, you know, wanting to continue to color and create. And here in the future, I believe what we're trying to do is not, you know, it says in the name a little bit, you want to know your future, but, you know, we're artists, we're creators. I think that's how it can tie in with what we're trying to do here, elevate and push the locals, which will in turn push ourselves. So I think this body of work and what you just explained, what it is for you and the culmination of all your time of learning to create, teach, explore, I think that ties in perfectly with No Future.
Yeah. And my understanding is this your first like gallery solo show?
Yeah.
That's like, for me, that's one of my favorite things to have, like in our gallery, because you see artists work in group shows, and it's like, okay, this group show has a theme, so their work is kind of a little bit that, but being able to like kind of like see what's really in your mind, like how you transform a space, like what your vision is with your work. As an artist ourselves, like it's fun to be able to have that freedom, that kind of like experimental, like the freedom to be experimental. Just because as an artist, you have clients, you know, where you're always kind of following, like what, yeah, like a direction, exactly what Sean said. But just like to be set, like loose in like a space and say, okay, like I want to, you know, like our last show was like turn this whole space into a, like a convenience store, or like how you like just turn this space into what is like rattling around in your in that skull of yours.
And I think also because we have 3 different curators, right? And so some of our interests will overlap, and then others. I think it makes like the calendar year shows, like the lineup of shows, really interesting because it's because it was just one of us. We might fall into a thing where we have just one type of work we're into at that moment. But I think it helped being like having 3 diverse point of views. We get a really at one point like because we're all artists, like a really high like standard of like what comes into the gallery, but then also eclectic and can go a bunch of different avenues because of maybe our own work or just the work we're interested in. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of like how it fits in. Because I mean, this year we've had each show has been really different, but the quality of the work has been really high across the board.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Something that you said that I wanted to touch on was you said that it allows an artist to make new work, and that was one of the things I wanted to do for this show, was to make everything new, and not bring something old that's been sitting in my studio for a while. I didn't want that to be in my show. The oldest pieces are maybe the actual wooden ones that have been around for about a year, but those were like the starting points for this work. And so part of the reason why I made these pieces were because I was in a group show with a lot of people and I wanted to stand out. I didn't want to just do a painting or a drawing, or I wanted to have something that looked completely different and push the boundaries of what art is and what that looks like for people, especially when you give it like a shape and a professional hanging. There's a lot for that. So that's what inspired like the rest of the concrete stuff.
Going along with that, like to be like do something a little different than from maybe what you see. Is there any? Are there any other like artists, either historical or current artists, that you feel like your work could sort of like talk with like their work? Like, does it relate to? Is there anything that like that ends up coming from like other stuff you've seen, or?
Well, the first piece on the wall, the signs, I think around that time I was looking a lot at Revoke's assemblage stuff from his Detroit chapter. That's what kind of inspired the collage kind of stuff. But I wasn't trying to like copy it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a theme of composition of found signs, and then he'd probably paint on top of them too. What is more inspiration?
And that term assemblage actually goes back further with someone like Robert Rauschenberg, who put found objects together too and called them assemblage.
Yeah. Yeah, something was stopping me from painting them completely, like painting them one solid color after that. And so I wanted to show the texture of all these materials and their uniqueness and their age.
Yeah.
Awesome, I like it. Your work, Spotty work is really really fucking cool, to say the least.
Thank you, man. I feel really proud of what I've learned through all these, and proud of how we got here. As a pat on the back, because I see a lot of success on the wall. I only see success on the wall, really. Even the ones that didn't work out ended up teaching you a lot. And those moments are also really successful.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Like, I've known you for just a short year and a half or so, but
I've known you forever, dude.
Forever. Well, it feels like forever. But with that, I mean, I've definitely seen, from what I've seen, your stuff is evolving, and that's always cool to see. I love to see an artist keep growing and expanding and trying new things. And yeah, keep it up, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, let's give Eric a round of applause, everybody. From the back.